I'm so very happy to share this space with such beautiful minds. I'm a self made woman, and you have heard me right. I'm a self made woman. I hail from a very conservative, patriarchal family of Punjab where women are not encouraged for work and higher education. In fact, I'm the first ever woman in the history of my entire family who chose to be a self made woman. And if I may say that human beings are blessed with infinite capacity to grow, you might take it as a rhetoric. However, my life is a living example of this statement. Almost 13 years ago, my average day would start at 6 in the morning, would take 1 hour long, very noisy, bumpy ride in auto to reach at my first workplace. Would work there for 8 hours and then off to the second job, would teach there for consecutive 3 hours and then back for another 1 hour long bumpy ride again in the same auto. And after 13 hours of this rigorous day, I would study for another 2 hours and somehow manage to stand amongst the top 5 students of my class. And this continued not for 2 years, not for 3 years, it continued for good 10 years. And and I think that how could I crack this? And I would say that when I started my working career, I did not have good grades. I definitely did not have a branded degree. But what I did have was pain and dejection. And let me tell you that it's not only coronavirus that isolates you, your suffering isolates you too. Your dejection isolates you too. And you feel all alone where you don't have any support system. But I tell you that you are the only hope. And in fact, the best helping hand is at the end of your own arm. I was hungry for my own personal growth. I wanted to stand on my own legs. And as you can see, I'm standing on my own legs. So, I am a positive psychologist now. I help people heal and liberate from their emotional and psychological pains. And when I say that, how do I do it? I actually rescued my own younger self, my own unwanted child, inner child. I took care of that. And let's get started. As a child, and as a child and as a grown up for a long time, I wanted to change the way people behave around me. How many of you think that you also feel the same? Please raise your hands. Okay, I had this long list of expected behaviors that I wanted my parents to be more affectionate, I wanted my brothers to be more considerate, and this was constantly breeding a sense of disappointment and stress in my life. It took me almost a lifetime to understand that you cannot change others but yourself. My dangerously positive life orientation brought me closer to positive psychology, and my long standing quest to decode individual differences had finally got some scientific explanation. I'm very happy to share it with you, guys, that optimism, resilience, hope, happiness, these can be learned, these can be taught, and these are measurable life skills. And Oprah Winfrey says, and I quote, that when we know better, we choose better. I urge you to choose positivity, choose optimism, choose hope, and see how much optimism can offer to you. Leading research in the field of optimism indicates that people with positive life orientation tend to live longer, heal faster, achieve greater academic grades. They are happier people. They enjoy better day to day positive moods. They are more resilient. They are more, their ability to deal with stress and depression is more effective. And the list continues. It sounds very interesting, but it takes more than just a motivational talk to be an optimistic person. So I have a question for you. How many of you think that optimism means being happy? Please raise your hands. Okay, there are very few. Okay, and how many of you think that optimism means being a positive person? Okay, it's neither actually, it's a trick question. Optimism means that your ability to explain the crisis that you handle. You see that when things go very well, grades are coming really high, I am healthy, things are working, it's easy to be an optimistic person. But it takes really, really very difficult, tough courage when things do not go well. All right? So our question is that how can we be optimistic in this world of perfect, in fact, world, full of unrealistic expectation, constantly demanding overachievement? How can we be optimistic here? I always wonder, and this is somehow a little bit philosophical, please bear with it. I always wonder that being human beings often take death as a natural course of action. Do you agree? And we don't judge people that, oh, he's dead. Right? Why can't we take suffering as a universal reality, as a common course of action, not an individual curse? You see? And when I asked you that, yes, suffering is a universal reality, you need to understand that our concept of suffering is under the shadow of shame. We feel ashamed when we lose any person, place, or thing. Don't you agree? So my clients often say that, why it happened to me? Why me? Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? You see, we have been listening and we have been seeing our very near and dear ones grappling with tragedy, loss, crisis, divorce, but somehow we don't expect suffering for ourselves. Do you agree? And what happens as a consequence that we stay in a long state of shock when a crisis hit us. On the other hand, we should think about things that how can we overcome this crisis? Yes, it has happened. Yes, I face it. I accept it. It happened to me. But how can I overcome this crisis? So I would say that my slides are slightly behind. So I would like to share this beautiful quote with you. It says that don't throw away your suffering. Touch your suffering. Face it directly and your joy will become deeper. Let's get agreed. Let's try to make peace with this understanding that suffering is part and parcel of life. Our job is to use our education, use our exposure, use our very superior rationality to find and devise techniques that or coping styles that can make our life or suffering easier to handle. And for that, I have brought three most common setbacks of our culture. Number one is academic failure, marriage failure, and professional failure. So let's have a look at these three failures and two coping styles that usually or frequently been observed. Number one is give up attitude, and number two is put up attitude. People with negative life orientation often take these three challenges as a life threatening event, and they think that if they are going to lose any one of them, their sense of self would be diminished and they find no meaning left in their life after this failure. On the other hand, if we look at the put up position or the coping style, we discover that people consider these failures as single act of loss. They do get consumed by the loss, but still actively, constructively, they try to overcome that difficulty by looking at things that are still working in their life. So which one you see, former or latter in your observation? Put up or give up? Okay. Martin Seligman is called as the father of positive psychology, and he says that people become hopeless when they find themselves helpless, having no control in the external reality. And now our question is that how can we inculcate hope and optimism among people? There is wealth of information in the field of optimism and positive psychology which gives you tried and tested tools that you can try, but I have brought only 3 techniques that you can apply on your any stress, depression, or even bereavement, loss, trauma that can help you. Okay, number 1 is big picture view. So as I said that we need to reorient our understanding of suffering, I would say that you imagine your learning, your wound, your depression, your crisis as a learning box. Let's say this is my crisis, and every time this crisis comes to me, it makes me shrink and I keep becoming smaller and smaller. And the moment stress hits me, I feel like my ability to see possibility gets shrunk. I cannot see any hope around me. Do you agree or you don't? All right, so my intention to share it with you is that you can see this particular picture. It says that you are only there are assumptions, there is a gap between facts and assumption. So every time depression or a crisis hits you, you need to see the big picture view and see what this challenge, this depression has to teach to me. What is the learning in it? What is there, what is new in there that I can improve and expand as a person? So I would suggest that every time you are frustrated or depressed, why it is happening to me, how can I overcome, please try to see, ask these very powerful questions to you, that what is my role in the bigger scheme of life? I personally think we are not sent here for getting good grades and getting married, give birth to children, and then waiting for the retirement. We are here for a very specific reason. And this is my personal understanding that each one of us is blessed with a gift. Our first job is to identify that gift. And once that gift is identified, our second job is to spread it and use it for the welfare of the people around. That's how I see it. So your loss, your failure is one part of your life. It's not the complete picture of your life. So always see at the bigger picture view, and how science back it up. This is incredible work by Ellen Langer. She is known as mother of mindfulness. And when I say mother of mindfulness, you don't need to recall mother of dragons. She is not related to her. So it's like she has done this remarkable work in the field of mindfulness, and she says that when we shift our focus from negative to the positive, how dramatically our life changes psychologically and emotionally. She has done this work, and her most recent work says that in the coming years we are going to face this polarized mind problem, and that is our mental fixation on only one single point of view, where we are unable to take any other point of view. So let's say I'm linking it with big picture view, that if you feel bogged down by the understanding that this area, my professional life, personal life, relationship, my grades don't work, and my whole energy is being consumed on that. You need to see that how, by just changing your perspective, by just shifting your attention from this negative incident to the positive incident, how different your physiology is. We were talking about smile, I think, just 10 minutes ago. I would just want to see that close your eyes and just smile for a second. Close your minds and just smile. Smile one more time. Smile bigger than the last time. Smile, smile one more time. So you can open your eyes. You can see that by instant focus, that previously you were focusing on the stuff that I was talking about, and now you have just brought back the same focus back to yourself, and how much it changes. So my second tip for you is that self-discovery is a tool for you. This is very close to my heart. And I love reading self and how we can empower self, because self is your bedrock on which you are standing. The first job that you have to do is take care of the self. And when I say self, I'm not talking about your grades, I'm not talking about your family background, I'm not talking about your professional designation, I'm talking about things that you hide. I'm talking about things that you feel inadequate, I'm talking about things that you feel ashamed of. If you take care of that shadow self, and if you can find out why do I do what I do, and why I'm not courageous enough that I can own what is important for me. So take care of yourself. And how would you do that? By spending time on it. It's not something that you can study in Kinnaird College or any other Oxford, Harvard. It's something that you do it with you. Spend time with you. Be intimate with yourself and discover who you are. I have never asked, I think, who am I is one question. That's a lifelong question. Ask this question: who am I now? Who am I now? Which means that every day, every week, every month you are changing. Keep track of yourself and start loving and liking and accepting yourself. Only then you would be able to see that how crises come and shake my personality, and how many spaces I get shaken on. Because when you have a shallow understanding of yourself and you are exposed to any tragedy, any trauma, you feel, no, I'm not going to accept this. And that is exactly what I was talking about, that we don't need to stay in a state of shock. Rather, we should stay in a state of preparation. Yes, we are more educated people. We are living in IT's world. Yes, we are talking about global village. Then we should have more control. If not control, we should have more ability to deal with crisis. So please pay attention to self-discovery. I would link another scientific research. This person is the pioneer of writing therapy. You must have heard, if you have a background of psychology, that talking therapy, that it works. He has done this research that people, those who keep the traumas, pains, and difficult conflicting issues to themselves, they tend to stay in depression for a long time. And people, those who express either orally or written, they tend to recover from those traumas far more easily and conveniently. He has done this an amazing work in the area of self-concealment. He says that people, those who are having low self-esteem and they feel really low of themselves, facing inferior complex, they tend to hide themselves. Self-concealment means that they don't open up themselves. And as a result, that their stress and depression is directly proportional to their self-concealment. So how do we hide ourselves? Again, I'm saying we hide ourselves because we don't own ourselves. We don't appreciate ourselves. So when you start this process of delayering yourself, that what is mine and what is actually I adapted for the social approval, you need to make a deliberate choice that which part of myself should be dropped because these are not serving my purpose, and which new parts which were not being taken by my background but I acquired it with my personal effort, I'm going to adapt them without being apologetic about it. So own yourself, discover yourself, and last but not the least, take action. I love this understanding that human beings are one of the finest creation of God, and we are so miraculously designed that sometimes we feel so flabbergasted about it. Why am I saying so? Every time you are depressed or you are under any crisis, in first 3 to 5 days, you generally discover that what are you supposed to do? Do you agree or you don't? Answers lies within you, I tell you. But what happens that we understand what are we supposed to do, but we don't have the courage to walk on the path that is coming from my inside, my intuition, my gut feeling, my GPS system is telling me that something is wrong and I can get away with that by ignoring it. So I would say that action is something that is required to come out of your state of whatever depression or crisis you are talking about, and that's your first step. And that step do not need to have a very big step. It can be as tiny as just procrastinating less today, blaming less today, less whining, and then you can start walking on the same road. I would also say that if you think I don't have any answer, please seek help. And there is no shame in seeking help. In our Pakistani culture, we think that these personal, psychological, and emotional issues shouldn't be addressed. They do not matter. I tell you, it matters. My emotional life and psychological life is more important to me. If your suffering is life threatening to you, yes, it is life threatening. If you are saying my suffering is just one single act of loss, yes, I need to buy that. No suffering is small, no suffering is big. It's you, how you are feeling about it. So take action, stand for yourself. And I would just close by with a beautiful quote of Maya Angelou. It says that someone has been wronged before you, was humiliated before you, somebody was frightened before you, hungry before you, but yet somebody survived. You can do anything you choose to do. Thank you very much.